Hi children, welcome to our online class. In our previous class we discussed sectors of economy and GDP. We can briefly discuss about those issues. There are three sectors in our economy: agriculture sector, industry sector and services sector. The definition of GDP is also discussed there. What is the definition for GDP? Definition of GDP: the total value of goods and services. The total value of goods or services produced within a country during a particular year is called gross domestic product. Gross domestic product, GDP. GDP. In the class, we learned what is GDP. In this class, we shall learn how to estimate GDP. How to estimate GDP. This is our lesson today. How do we estimate GDP? How do we calculate GDP? That is discussed in this lesson. Definition of GDP, we have already discussed it. Once again, I am repeating it. The total value of goods and services produced in a year during a particular produced in a country during a particular year is called gross domestic product, GDP. The second one is, how do we calculate the total value of goods? How do we calculate the total value of goods? Take for example, a farmer produces 100 kgs of paddy in his field. A farmer produces 100 kgs of paddy in his field. Later, he sells it to the rice miller. He sells it to the paddy grains. He sells these paddy grains to rice miller at 20 rupees per kg. He produces 100 kilograms of paddy grains and sells at 20 rupees per kg. 20 rupees per kg. 100 into 25. 2,500 rupees. 2,500 rupees. That is the value of paddy produced by farmer. That is the value of paddy produced by farmer. He sells his paddy grains to rice miller. I think you know what is the meaning of rice miller. Rice miller means a person who owns a rice mill is called a rice miller. Rice miller produces rice and husk from the paddy from whom he bought. He produces rice and husk from paddy grains. He produces 8 kgs of rice and 20 kgs of husk from the paddy which was bought from the farmer. And later, he sells his 8 kgs of rice to the hotelier and 20 kgs of rice, 20 kgs of husk to a hotelier. Both the products are sold to hotelier. Rice is sold at 40 rupees per kg. Rice is sold at 40 rupees per kg. He sold 80 kgs and the rate is 40 rupees per kg. 80 into 40. 3,200 rupees. He sells 20 kgs of husk at 20 rupees per kg. He sells 20 kgs of husk at 20 rupees per kg. 20 into 20, 400. 400. The value of the both rice and husk is 3,200 plus 400. Total 3,600. This is the value. This is the value of paddy at stage 2. That means at rice miller. This is the value of stage 2. 3,600 rupees. Rice miller sells his products, rice and husk, to a hotelier and earns 3,600 rupees. With these two products, by using these two products, the hotelier makes idli and dosa. Hotelier makes idli and dosa and sells them to 5,000 rupees. 5,000 rupees. This is the value of paddy at hotelier. This is the value of paddy at hotelier. That means at stage 3. The value of the paddy at stage 1 is 2,500 rupees. The value of paddy at stage 2 is 3,600 rupees. The value of paddy at stage 3 is 5,000 rupees. 5,000 rupees. This is the final value of paddy. This is the final value of paddy. This is one method to calculate total value of goods. This is a one way. There is also another way. Let us discuss it. What is the value of paddy at stage 1? What is the value of paddy at stage 1? 2,500 rupees. What is the value of paddy at stage 2? 3,600 rupees. What is the difference between these two values? 3,600 rupees minus 2,500 rupees. The difference is 1,100 rupees or 1,100 rupees. This is the difference. This is the added value to this. This is the added value to this one. What is the value of paddy at stage 3? What is the value of paddy at stage 3? Our answer is 5,000 rupees. 5,000 rupees. The value of paddy at second stage is 3,600 rupees. The value of paddy at third stage is 5,000 rupees. What is the difference between these two stages? 500 minus 3,600 rupees. For 1,400 rupees. 1,400 rupees. The fundamental value of the first value of paddy is 2,500 rupees. 2,500 rupees. The original value of paddy is 2,500 rupees. The value added at second stage is 1,100 rupees. The value added at third stage is 1,400 rupees. What is the total value of paddy? 5,000 rupees. 5,000 rupees. In this way also we got the same value. The same value 5,000. These are the two ways to calculate final value of goods or the total value of goods. Next, intermediate goods and final goods. These are the two types of goods. These are two types of goods. intermediate goods and final goods. Take for example, this example. What is this? Paddy. Paddy. First product is paddy. From paddy, what is extracted? What is produced? Rice. Rice and husk. What are the products of? What are the products? Products from rice and husk. By using rice and husk, the hotelier produced idli and dosa. Idli and dosa. In this example, paddy is used to produce rice. Paddy is used to produce rice. This good is used to produce another good. Paddy is used to produce husk. Paddy is used to produce husk. This is used to produce another one. A good is used to produce another good. These three goods are called intermediate goods. Intermediate goods. Intermediate goods. Intermediate goods means the goods which are used to produce another goods, are called intermediate goods. The answer for what are the intermediate goods? The answer is the goods which are used to produce another goods are called intermediate goods. I am repeating this. The goods which are used to produce another goods are called intermediate goods. In this situation, paddy, rice and husk are the intermediate goods. These are used to produce another goods. For example, paper. If you take paper, what is the intermediate goods? Paper is made from what? Paper is made from what? What is the intermediate good? What is the intermediate good? For example, a bus. What is the intermediate good to produce a bus? Iron, rubber, plastic, etc. These are intermediate goods. These are intermediate goods. For example, pen. What are the intermediate goods used to produce this one? Plastic. Plastic is an intermediate good in this situation. Idli and dosa are called final goods. Final goods that are ready to use. Final goods. The goods which are ready to use are called final goods. In this example, idli and dosa are final goods. Idli and dosa are final goods. Paddy, rice, husk are intermediate goods. Once I'm repeating this, the goods which are ready to use which are at a final stage are called final goods. Take for another example, the doors or windows. These are final goods. What are the intermediate goods? Wood. Wood is the intermediate goods. Wood is the intermediate goods. Book. Book is a final goods. What is the intermediate goods? Wood or timber. Cycle. Cycle is a final goods. What are the intermediate goods? Iron, plastic, rubber, etc. Those are useful to produce cycle. Okay, next. Financial year. We have already discussed it. We have already discussed it. Economic year. In our previous class, we discussed economic year. Economic year means an year starts in April and ends in March is called an economic year. It is also called financial year. Financial year. Generally, in our general life, all of us follow calendar year. Calendar year. What is the first month in calendar year? January. What is the last month in calendar year? December. A calendar year starts in January and ends in December. In this way, a financial year starts in April and ends in March. This is called financial year. For example, 2009-10 financial year. This means from 2009 April to 2010 March. That is the financial year. Every economy in the world follows financial year. There is also academic year. Academic year starts in June and ends in May. Our schools follow, our education system follows academic year. These are different years. Those are used on different purposes. In the economy, we use financial year. In the education system, we use academic year. In our daily life, we use calendar year. Next, unpaid works. Unpaid works. GDP records the final value of goods and services produced. The final value of goods and services produced. But there are many items that are not sold and purchased in markets. Once I'm repeating this, GDP records only the final goods or services produced. But there are many items, there are many activities that are not sold or purchased in the market. For example, the household work. Cleaning the house, cooking in the house, bringing up the children, tending plants, etc. All these are unpaid works. All these are done by housewives or housemakers. In recent days, housewives are called housemakers. Both the words are same. These housewives are not paid. These housewives are not paid salary. Are you paying salary to your mother in your house, in your home? No. So these are called unpaid works. The GDP did not calculate the services of unpaid workers. The services of unpaid workers. It records only paid work. It does not record unpaid works. Unpaid works are also important in our economy. Without caring children, without feeding home, without cooking in a home, we can't survive. But these are not taken into consideration in calculating GDP. Next, how to compute the growth rate of GDP? How to compute the growth rate of GDP? Compute means calculate. How to calculate the growth rate of GDP? Let us examine this table. This is the first column. The first column, financial years are mentioned. Financial years are mentioned. We have already discussed what is financial year. GDP, it is also discussed. Growth of GDP. Growth of GDP. Growth means increase, increment. Increase of GDP. Growth of GDP means increase of GDP. Growth rate of GDP. Growth rate of GDP. That means the percentage of growth in GDP. The percentage of growth in GDP. that is also mentioned here, percentage. For example, in 2009-10 financial year, the GDP of a country is 1000 rupees. The GDP of a country is 1000 rupees. What is the growth of GDP? We can't say what is the growth here, because the previous years, the GDP of the previous year did not mention here. So we can't say the growth rate of GDP, the growth of GDP. In this situation also, the GDP of the previous year did not mention here. So the growth rate of GDP is also not mentioned here. If you take the second example, the financial year 2010-11, what is the GDP? What is the GDP of 2010-11? 1,100 rupees. 1,100 rupees. What is the GDP of the previous year? 1,000 rupees. The GDP of the previous year is 1,000 rupees. The GDP of the 2010-11 is 1,100 rupees. What is the difference? 100 rupees. 1,100 rupees minus 1,000 rupees is equal to 100 rupees. That is the growth of GDP. That is the growth of GDP. The previous year's GDP is 1,000. The growth of the next year is 100. If we calculate it in the percent, the growth means the growth of GDP. 100 here. The growth of GDP by present GDP and the previous GDP. 1,000 rupees. 1,000 rupees into 100. Once I repeating this, the difference of the GDP of two financial years. The difference of these two financial years, 100 by the GDP of the previous year. GDP of the previous year, 1,000 rupees into 100. Into 100. %. Growth rate of GDP in 2010-11 is 10%. 10%. That means the previous year's GDP is 1,000 and 100 is increased. 100 in the 1,000 is equal to 10%. That is the growth rate of GDP. If you take the third financial year, this is 2011-12. 2011-12. What is the GDP in this year? 1,100, 1,200 or 1,200 rupees. What is the GDP of the previous year? 1,100 rupees. What is the difference? What is the difference between these 2 years GDP? 100 rupees. 1,200 rupees minus 1,100 rupees. The difference is 100 rupees. 100 rupees. That is the difference of GDP of two different years by the GDP of the previous year. GDP of the previous year. We should not take the present year. GDP of the previous year should be taken. 1,100 rupees into 100. We are calculating in percentage. So we have to multiply with 100. We have to multiply with 100. 111. 100 by 11 is equal to nearly 9%. Nearly 9%. That is a growth rate of GDP of financial year 2010, 11. 9%. 2011, 12, 9%. What is the growth rate of 2012 and 13? The GDP is 1300 rupees. The difference is 100 rupees. The difference of the two financial years by the GDP of the previous year. The GDP of the previous year. 1200 rupees into 100. Nearly 8.3%. Nearly 8.3%. This one, 8.3%. This is a growth rate of 2012-13 financial year. That is some of the lesson what we learned today. First, we discussed definition of GDP. Once I'm repeating this, the total value of goods and services produced within a country during a particular year is called gross domestic product. Gross domestic product, GDP. The second one, how do we calculate the total value of goods? Total value of goods. We calculate the total value of goods in two ways. First way, calculate the total values in the first way, and in the second way, we calculate the values by adding values at each stage. At each stage, we added the values. The next topic is types of goods. Types of goods. Intermediate goods and financial goods. What are the intermediate goods? The goods which are used to produce another goods. The goods which are used to produce another goods are called intermediate goods. In our example, paddy, rice and husk are intermediate goods. The second one is final goods. What are the final goods? The goods which are ready to use are called final goods. In our example, idli and dosa. Idli and dosa are final goods. Next, financial year. Every economy in the world follows financial year. Financial year starts in April and ends in March. Unpaid works. GDP records the total value of goods and services produced in the market only, in the market value only. But there are many items that are not sold or that are not purchased in the market. We cannot buy the services of mother in the markets. These unpaid works are not recorded in the GDP. Though they are very useful to our economy, but they are unpaid. So they are not recorded in our GDP. How to compute the growth rate of GDP? How to compute means how to calculate. We discussed with the help of table here. Okay, thank you.